Hello and welcome to Rise Zion. My name is Seth, and today I am joined by Trey again, and you might actually recognize him from a previous episode that we did. He told us a story from his mission. Now, Trey is actually with us because he is an expert at mind games, and he's here to psychoanalyze the individual known as Chief Midegah. Just kidding, though. Not really. but yes, I just invited Trey on here to offer some of his unique insights. And, you know, he actually called me because he had some questions regarding a video that he saw by Chief Midegah. And we're going to respond to that today with him. I just thought it would be a great idea to have him on.
Yeah, I saw the video that Chief Midegah put out about you. I thought it was actually a really strange video, like just some of the stuff that he was saying and some of the stuff he was saying about you that you did, and I wasn't sure like what part of it is, if it was true or not. And so, yeah, it'd be cool to go through this and break it down.
Yeah. So I actually have clips again, and I was actually, I don't know about you, but I was kind of, well, just a little bit disturbed. Like disturbed is a very powerful word for it. But in this video, he called me names. He called me a liar without evidence. I was shocked and appalled by the accusations. But as usual, we're going to show you these clips and we're going to respond to them. I'm going to respond to them. And if you have any questions, you can ask me as we're going, so I can help clarify these things for you. And I'm sure that a lot of people have the same questions that you do. So I thought it was a good idea to have you on. Now,
yes, sir. Let's do it.
Yeah. Now, I just thought that I should start by kind of responding to the name calling that was going on on his video. He called me a liar. He said that several times, actually. And, something that really stood out to me in my video, I wasn't interested in attacking Midegah as a person. I just made a video talking about some of my concerns I had about the remarks that he made at the Missouri conference. I didn't attack him personally. But I can see that instead of actually addressing my questions and concerns, he's the one who's actually been attacking me personally. Now that's what's called an ad hominem attack, right? Now, I don't know, my channel really isn't about the whole debate stuff, but ad hominem basically means that you're attacking the person rather than addressing the ideas that they bring up. I just thought that was something that I should mention as we're starting that. And I know that, Trey, that you're probably aware of this. You've been on YouTube a little bit.
Yeah, I watched your video where you're talking about him at the Missouri conference, and I thought you were actually being really gracious with it. A lot of people, pretty much everybody that sees Chief Midegah and hears his claims, either they instantly they reject him, they don't like him, or they do like him, they follow what he's saying. But you were kind of in the middle. You were saying there's some good things I'm seeing happening here, some exciting stuff. I think maybe some good result out of this, but I have these concerns about some of the stuff that he's saying and putting out there. And so I thought it was actually pretty gracious. And so for him to kind of snap back like this and pretty angrily, it's a little concerning, like you said.
I've had one exchange with him, and it was in a message board where I was just like, you're lying. You got to be careful because you can get sued for stuff like that. It's the only communication we've ever had. We've never emailed him. We've never called him. We've never sent him a letter. He's under no threat of anything. He's lying. And it's bewildering to me because he's emailed us a lot. He's called us a lot. We have his IP address, and he's constantly, and we track it because we don't know if he's a crazy person that's going to try to harm us. So we track it, and he's constantly going through our websites and constantly, this guy is strange, and I don't know what his problem is.
So this clip is right at the beginning of his video, his new video. He starts out like I said, not really addressing my concerns that I brought up in my video. And I believe that I've been very, very clear as to what my concerns are. He says he doesn't know what my problem is. Well, I mean, you could just look at my video and find out and then address those instead of calling me names. Now, specifically, I was very concerned about the claim that David Taylor Midegah, with some of the things that he said while attending this conference in Missouri, in which he revealed that he had a dream in which he was instructed by heavenly personages. He says to build 2 temples. The obvious problem with that is that Midegah does not really have the proper priesthood keys. He doesn't have the authority to build any temples, and his remarks were addressed primarily to members of the church and those of the Restoration movement. It was to LDS people and hosted by LDS people. So his remarks were in that very specific context, despite what he may say later. Now, as for the claim that we've had one exchange, that is true. So, but that would be him threatening me in a video that he created entitled Rise Zion, Conversation or Court. Now, this was our only interaction. He later deleted that video, but several of my followers later contacted me about it, and they were very alarmed, saying that Midegah was threatening me to sue me and asking me what all of that was about. I've never contacted him outside of making videos commenting on his remarks, for which we still have no answers, by the way. Only more obfuscation and confusing word salads, and I say that a lot about him. He does have this tendency to kind of make word salads a lot. So in this video, in this clip, he seems to be making some sort of a case here that he never actually threatened me with a lawsuit, which is simply not the case. He has indeed threatened me and the church with lawsuits. Now, that doesn't actually mean that he has to contact me in order to do that. He threatened me through his videos. And as my videos reasonably prove, I believe. Additionally, he's saying that I've emailed him a lot and called them a lot, and this is not the case. Like, who's they, right? He says that they're tracking my IP address, and I'm not sure how one could even assign a person to a particular IP address out of the thousands of IP addresses that visit a site at any given point. And I was unaware that Midegah even had a website, so I don't think that he does. Now, I did actually send a brief, and this might be what he's referring to. Okay, so I'm trying to be fair here. So I did send one email to a Wendy Phillips, who is actually an elder of the tribe which Midegah is representing. Now, I asked some very basic questions politely to find out the truth of what was going on, and I'll include a copy of this email in the video so you can actually read it. But what, some of the questions that I asked Trey were directly directed at Wendy, and I asked her some basic questions like, do you actually endorse what Midegah is doing, for example? Or is he acting on his own here? I asked questions as to how many people Midegah represents as an ambassador. As far as I can tell, the tribe that he represents consists of about 5 people. As far as I can see online, it's about 5 people. So I asked if Midegah's personal beliefs reflect those generally held by Anishinaabe peoples. So quite a large group of people, as I understand it, that live up in the Great Lakes region into Canada. So I'd like to know if his personal beliefs reflect those generally held by the Anishinaabes people. In regards to temples, for example, and gathering the tribes of Israel. I asked questions in regard to the fabled birch bark scrolls that supposedly exist, that corroborate the Book of Mormon stories. And I asked for photo evidence if possible. However, I haven't received any return emails yet. Do you think that those are reasonable questions? Let me bring you into this here.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's not like he's giving off this vibe that you're just like attacking him down his throat and everything. And no, it seems like you sent one email that has some pretty basic questions in it, some good questions. I just like genuinely curious. Like those are some nice things that I would like to know. I'm interested in Chief Midegah's work, what he's trying to do, and so I think a lot of people are just kind of wondering, like, some more information on him. He does, like you said, he gets pretty vague on a lot of things, and it's kind of hard to pin down exactly like what is he doing and where is he coming from. And it just kind of makes it all a little bit more, kind of sketchy, suspicious.
Yeah. Well, and I thought it would be nice to get Wendy's take on it too, because she'd sort of be an outside source, apart from Midegah, so she could corroborate some things. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I sent one email, haven't gotten a response yet. That's fine. I never emailed anybody repeatedly. I never called anybody repeatedly. But just to be fair, that might be what Midegah is referring to when he says that I I emailed somebody like 100 times or whatever. That's just not the case. I didn't do that. So anyway, we'll see what happens. So why did I reach out in the first place to Wendy? Well, I'm generally curious, like you, Trey, to know what's going on. And I think a lot of people would like to know as well. I think you're in the same boat. In addition to that, a person named Brian Nettles from the channel Book of Mormon Heartland suggested that people reach out if they do have questions. And so I did. So I thought that was a good thing to do. Anyway, yeah.
Was the email before your video or after your video?
Yeah, after the video I sent that. It was after my first video, I believe. So I did my first video about my red flags that make me hit pause. So that was the first video. And then there was quite a lot of buzz happening in the comment section, and I realized that I had done something that a lot of people found controversial. and so I reached out to Wendy to try to figure out what was going on, to try to get some evidence to corroborate or, disprove what Midegah was claiming here. So, yeah, thanks for that question.
And he's focused on like church membership stuff. I may be a member of a church, but that's like my personal preference protected under the Constitution. And I can be a member of a church and still be filling an official like government position.
Yeah. Now this clip was quite strange to me. It was a very bizarre way of saying it. And it's like, yeah, I believe it or not, I'm actually concerned about church members and stuff. It's just interesting how Midegah chooses to characterize his relationship with the church here actually too. Right. So, yes, it's true that anyone can be a member of the church and also fill an official government position, but that doesn't give you the right to also teach false doctrines as a member of the church. So that's just something to keep in mind, right? Now, there's this really bizarre notion that has been floating around in the comment section. And it goes something like this, and you've probably read some of this in the comments if you've been watching. So Midegah is acting not as a member of the church, they say, but rather as an Indian chief. And when he says that he has a vision, he's doing so as an Indian chief. So therefore, everything that he says is okay, I guess. Now, they're either saying that or they're saying that we shouldn't take anything that he says seriously at all, right? Like really, you can't have it both ways. It's either one thing or the other. So I don't know. What do you think about?
Like, he's trying to, like, the way I'll put it is like he's trying to leverage both sides. It looks like,
yeah.
If he wants to just be an Indian chief and be, doing stuff with his tribe, then that's okay, and he can be doing whatever. But he's trying to obviously leverage his position with members of the church as well and bring them into this, and then that's when you're in a whole different territory, because now you're actually infiltrating and teaching things to members of the church as a member of the church. And it's not just you being in your government position as a chief.
Yeah,
it's like you can't really be leveraging both sides like that.
Yeah, and it's really just strange to read. There's like some people in the comments will say things like well, like if he was a Buddhist, for example, but he's not a Buddhist, he's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, So, I mean, you guys can't really have it both ways. It's like you can't have your cake and eat it too here. So, I love the word that you use there, leverage. I think that is a very good word. Now, other people will say various things like, he never claimed that he was going to build temples. And that's clearly a false statement. He really said that he was going to build two temples during the Missouri Conference. And what they'll say is, no, he said that he was actually going to build cultural centers or language centers or whatever. But then people will turn around and say, like, oh, yes, he's been very clear the whole time. He said 2 temples, 2 cultural centers, and a language center. So obviously it's not clear. Like, people are very confused about it. And it has to do with the way that Midegah is presenting the data, as far as I can tell. He came out with a video right after the Missouri Conference saying, oh, just to clarify, you guys, what we're building is actually cultural centers. And he didn't clarify if he was clarifying statements made at the Missouri Conference, clarifying that he wasn't actually building temples. So confusion abounds just in the way that he's presenting the information as well. So
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously talked about them as temples. He's called them temples that he wants to build, and he's literally marketing it to members of the church
yeah,
as like our temple ceremonies, but that he's going to include the members of his tribe in it as well. And so
yeah,
same example. He's like leveraging both sides, and like once people like call him out on how he's using the church, or he's doing things wrongly within the system of the church, then he tries to like fall back on the being an Indian chief and doing it for his tribe, and that it's not really involved with the church. But it's like, no, you're obviously going at it from both angles.
yeah. I mean, as far as I can tell, there is not a group of Anishinaabe peoples out there who actually believe in temples as Latter-day Saints believe in temples. There's not actually a group of Anishinaabe peoples that believe in gathering the tribes of Israel as Chief Midegah does. As far as I can tell, he's acting on his own here, and he's specifically leveraging the beliefs of the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and other restoration branches to support his cause, either financially or otherwise.
What happens when they violate the laws? They bind the corporation. We did not file a lawsuit because it's just too like, man, this is bad. Apparently, members of the church forget that I may be a member, but I am in official capacity of a tribal responsibility, and so if a corporation violates the Federal Indian Non-Intercourse Act, or someone in official capacity violates the Commerce Clause, or puts something in writing that is clearly, it's perceived as a violation of like 3 different acts related to Indians, or an extortion and coercion, we're going to notify them. We notified the church leadership through their law firm and said, hey, you guys might want to like review this. We got an apology on one of the 3 issues.
I know that you had some questions in regards to what he was referring to when he mentioned extortion and coercion. Mm-hmm. And he brings up these words a lot, these inflammatory words. And this actually goes back to other videos that he has done in which he kind of expresses extortion and coercion, but he doesn't actually specifically come out and say what it is. But I've gone through a lot of the footage of things that he's said in the past, and tried to put together what he's actually referring to. And actually, a lot of this information comes thanks to Brian from the Book of Mormon Heartland podcast. And he's in favor of Midegah, actually. Now, something also to keep in mind, at this point, I just don't believe him. Like, I don't actually believe that Midegah sent anything into the law offices of the church. To this day, he hasn't actually made these complaints public. The complaints are in written format, and Brian had them in his possession when he was talking about each of the 5 points that he's referring to. And that's what he says when we got an apology for one of these 3 issues. He's referring to a total of 5 issues, I'm assuming, and he got supposedly an apology on one of them. So just to clarify that. So in the other video, we talked about what he actually means when he says extortion and coercion. We addressed that directly. And frankly, it's absolute nonsense. And the only reason we know about it is because Brian from the Book of Mormon Heartland channel created a second video about Midegah's lawsuit threats. Okay, and I'll include a link to that as well. So now just keep in mind that we don't actually have any evidence that this actually happened at all. So in this case, what he's talking about here specifically, because he never actually says it out loud, is that when they were in Missouri doing this conference, he claims that they were contacted by a bishop by letter who learned of the conference and then rightfully contacted them to inform them of a proper church procedure regarding temples. Now, and he's actually totally correct on this, by the way, right? There's a proper procedure that one needs to go through. Midegah does not have the authority to build Latter-day Saint temples, and the bishop informed them as much. So the bishop informed them that if there are Anishinaabe peoples who would like to go through the temple, they need to go through the proper channels, including baptism, and that's what he's talking about when he says that they were instructed to line up outside the bishop office and stuff like that. So he brings that up several times in different videos.
So he's trying to say that the church is basically oppressing or being oppressive to these Native Americans by trying to basically like he thinks it's like a forcing baptism on them for them to be able to go through the temple.
Right. Like it's like subjugating his people or like coercing them in some way to make them go through this process. Like the corporation of the church. He brings that up quite a lot too. The idea of a corporation of the church, and they must be subjugated into the corporation of the church. So like that's kind of what I get the vibes of.
Yeah, this is where it gets pretty weird for me because kind of like what I was saying earlier about how he's like leveraging both sides. It's like he's trying to be in two different lanes. So it's like on one hand, he's speaking to the members of the church, talking about how amazing the church is and Joseph Smith for restoring these amazing truths that have to do with his culture and kind of like bringing these things back to light and making an environment where what he believes are these prophecies of his culture coming to pass. But then on the other hand, he wants to try to act like the church is the bad guy and they're like appropriating his culture, oppressing his people by doing these types of things. And it's like, which one is it? You've got to pick a lane.
Yeah.
Is the church the good guy that's doing these amazing things, or is the church the bad guy that's somehow appropriating and oppressing?
Right. And that is a really good point to bring up too, because later on in the video, we're going to play some clips here that make it kind of seem like he doesn't really understand the principles of the restoration. It kind of makes it sound like he doesn't really believe that the restoration was necessary at all. Insofar as his people may have already had the priesthood, for example. So anyway, that's we'll get to that. So let's flesh out this story a little bit more of the bishop. So the bishop, gets in touch with him through a letter. He says that he has a letter. I've never seen this letter. Nobody has ever seen it as far as I'm aware. Anyway, so after this, the bishop says, go through the proper channels. Totally correct. And then presumably at some later point, a stake president got wind of what was happening, right? And he being under the impression that there was going to be a lot of people and that they were going to have this massive influx of Native American converts, he said that if people need jobs, he knows how he can get jobs for people, like as a matter of charity, right? So Midegah has brought this up several times in different videos, and he compares this to like, and that's what he like brings up the Commerce Clause and the Non-Intercourse Act a lot in his videos, and this is what he's referring to. He says that you're not allowed to like dangle a carrot in front of Native American peoples in order to entice them to like do something. And that is just not what is going on here. Like, if this happened at all, keep in mind, because we still don't have any evidence that any stake president or bishop contacted them at all. Right. So, I mean, it just is ridiculous to me. Upon further investigation, it is ridiculous, in my opinion.
It's really strange, especially because, like you said, the bishop and stake president in this scenario, this supposedly true scenario, they didn't do anything wrong. They actually did the exact right thing that I think they should have done. And so trying to claim like that there needs to be a lawsuit, that like certain laws are being violated, it's like what is his point? What's he trying to do? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and like claims to send like a letter to the legal offices of the church. Anyway, it just seems like he's just so focused on this grievance culture and grievance peddling that he can't see the possibility or of misunderstanding that perhaps this is charity rather than extortion and coercion as the words that he uses, right? It's just ridiculous.
So people say, Midegah is overstepping the boundaries. No, I'm not. I'm representing a tribal nation, and we have a tribal history. And our history doesn't need the approval of any corporation or any church.
So I don't think that anyone ever claimed that your history needs approval of the church. Okay. However, if you're announcing temples, that's a whole nother ball of wax entirely. That would be a very clear example of overstepping boundaries. So I just think that that's a good example of a straw man fallacy. It could be. He's saying that the arguments of the other side revolve around approval of their history in some way. When in reality, what we're saying is, no, you don't have the authority to build a Latter-day Saint temple. And you're claiming some priesthood authority to perform ceremonies within the temple as in the LDS concept of a temple. Now, that clearly is a problem, right? Now, again, another interpretation of this clip is, if you're claiming that your history teaches that you do actually have priesthood authority, and therefore you do have the authority to build temples. Okay? So you can certainly say that and even believe it very deeply, but that doesn't make it true. Okay? And you are also not entitled to teach that as truth and remain a faithful member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at the same time. Again, you can't teach false doctrines and remain a member of the church in good standing. What is your take on that?
Yeah, you definitely do need the approval of the church because, like, again, he's advertising this to members of the church as something that he's trying to mesh with the doctrines of the church, that it works with the Book of Mormon, it works with the priesthood and the keys, and that he's going to do this, and he's doing this all to the members of the church. That's when you've got a problem, because the church has a way of doing things that has been taught since the beginning, since Joseph Smith. When Joseph Smith was still alive, very early on, there were people doing these exact types of things. They were coming to the Latter-day Saints saying that they also had visions and that they knew that they needed to help lead the church in this way, to do this or that. And Joseph Smith put an end to that type of stuff really fast. And he said, that's not how this works. There's order and there's lines of authority of how things operate in the church. And you can't step out of that. And people are getting excommunicated for that type of stuff. Yeah, the fact that he's trying to act like this is normal, that this is something that he can actually do, and then try to act like he doesn't need the approval of the church because he's actually just doing this as a Native American tribe, just, trying to like switch lanes every time he gets pressed on something, and just like work that leverage of like gaining that popularity and that momentum and help support from members of the church by leveraging their doctrines and their priesthood with them. But then as soon as he gets pressed on anything, he doesn't need approval from the church. It's not about the church. I'm just Indian chief. It's like, no.
Right. What you said is absolutely true. Like, he is absolutely talking to principally members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Again, that Missouri conference was to primarily members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Restoration movements. Again, the whole thing was hosted by a Latter-day Saint channel, Zion Media, right? And not only that, but as far as I'm aware, the only church that has a doctrine in which the temple law is significant is in the Restoration branches. So he's clearly targeting that audience. So that's absolutely true. And another thing that you said was very important too. There's historical precedents for this as well. So the very beginning of the church, Joseph Smith put down very, very quickly people claiming to have authority outside of the first presidency. So outside of the prophet himself. So yes, we do have a very rigid way that revelations of this type come forward.
It's our history. The Book of Mormon is a history. It's a fraction of a history. So if you can't understand that, can't help you.
Okay. Here he seems to be alluding to a wider body of knowledge. Again, the birch bark scrolls, right? That his people uniquely possess, which the restored Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints does not have. Okay. Now, if this is true, he should easily be able to prove it. It's his positive claim, right? Therefore, the onus is on him. The burden of proof is on him to prove that. I think that's a very reasonable thing. So, you'd be hard pressed, I think, however, to find any Anishinaabe peoples who believe the same way as David Taylor Midegah does, which is why I reached out to Wendy, you see. So, to see what her thoughts were on the subject. But from what I've read online, what's available to me online, the Anishinaabe people do not have the same concept of Latter-day Saints do, especially about temples and whatnot. So there are two very different belief systems here that may at times overlap. Like David in this video brings up the concept of the family. That's, of course, very important to the Anishinaabe peoples, and that's very important to Latter-day Saint peoples. However, that does not make us the same religion or even remotely similar in the majority of ways.
Yeah. Like with these, birch bark scrolls and claimed other sources of scripture that support the Book of Mormon, like that's exciting stuff. I hope that this is true. I want it to be true. And to be fair, I believe he makes the claim of it being some type of like sacred thing, and that's maybe why. Am I right about this? Maybe that's why he's not coming forth with a lot of it right now.
I've never heard him say that, but you could be right.
Okay, I'm not sure where I got that from, but to be fair, that would be. I can't. I definitely don't have anything against something like being sacred or having to come forth in a different time or a different way, if that is the case. But like we want these things to be true. As Larry is saying, that's exciting. We want to be able to see new scriptures, things that support the Book of Mormon. And so, like, honestly, like it starts to seem like maybe he's just being kind of elusive with it, though.
Yeah.
Instead of just like being really forthright about it and coming forth with it, and kind of being elusive with it on purpose, because that really gets Latter-day Saints really intrigued and involved and excited.
Yeah, it is exciting. I mean, like you said, it's something that catches the attention of Latter-day Saints, particularly, right? Now, his claim here, though, and I think that I should point this out, I'm going to push back just a little bit on your statement is, so, I mean, it's sacred, right? So he's not going to show it. But what he's claiming is that he has authority, right, over us, or that he has a record that's greater than the Book of Mormon. So he's comparing the two, but not giving this the benefit of actually having the record, So it's very interesting. So if it's sacred, then why are you using it as a cudgel,
Right. And another thing is, like, additional scripture coming forth, that would also be something that would be pretty important to have go through proper priesthood channels. And so it's like to bring that before like general authorities, 12 apostles. And I know that he's talked quite a bit in the past. He keeps talking about how he's going to have a meeting with a higher up in the church, an apostle, and then it kind of never happens. And he talks about how it's coming in the future, and he has this in the works, and it gives out the same vibes. Like another thing that he's just kind of like holding over the head of the members, saying like, "Oh yeah, this is coming. Like, don't worry. Like I'm gonna be meeting with the church," so they feel kind of more secure about what he's doing. But then it never really happens. And
that's his carrot, right? That's the carrot that he's dangling in front of the Latter-day Saint people. So
yeah,
just a thought. He accuses that state president of dangling carrots.
Those that I represent that are over 60 couldn't raise their children, and they couldn't be raised by their parents. They were forcibly sterilized. They were penalized criminally for speaking their language and practicing their culture. Of course, there are times when, in the position of a government official, I'm going to stand firm like a brick wall against your ability to continue to harm them.
All right, so this is one of the things that I kind of find very somewhat disturbing. It seems in this clip that he's accusing the church of having it like continuing to harm people. That's the kind of language that he presents here in this clip. And when I hear it, it's really hard for me to get past the grievance peddling here. Now, that being said, the injustices suffered by the Anishinaabe people and other indigenous peoples, such as forced sterilizations, the criminalization of their language and cultural practices, and the separation of families, are heartbreaking and inexcusable. And they actually did happen. Now, these actions, however, were not perpetrated by the church. So, and they're certainly not being perpetrated now. I mean, I don't understand where he gets off saying these kind of things and having no pushback from people. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, it's really strange. Again, like the church was never doing this type of stuff. The church has actually done a huge amount of great things for the indigenous peoples, the Native Americans, since the early days of the church. Just the fact of what Joseph Smith taught and what the Book of Mormon teaches, that these people, like when the conquistadors came here and when they were colonizing the Americas, I mean, they were treating the Native Americans horribly. They thought they were just like savages, lower life people that, you know, weren't the same, weren't even on the same level. But Joseph Smith comes along with the Book of Mormon, and he shows that, you know, these people, they came from, they're you know, from the tribe of Israel. They're the God's chosen people, and you know, they have lost the gospel that they once had, and so it's our job to help restore it to them, because these are actually incredible people with incredible potential. And that continued on with you know, Brigham Young when they were settling in the West. And Brigham Young actually, when you look into the history, it's really amazing to see how well Brigham Young treated the Native Americans, especially even there was Native Americans that were like warring against the Saints, stealing their stuff. And Brigham Young actually did an amazing job of handling it, where all the other people that were going out west were just trying to kill all the Native Americans that they could. Brigham Young did a lot of amazing things, and that's continued throughout the whole history of the church. There's been a really amazing history of elevating the Native Americans, helping them, you know, trying to restore them to the house of Israel. Just really beautiful doctrines that involves them. And so to try to act like now the church is part of the oppressive system against the Native Americans, I feel like that's disingenuous. And it's kind of intellectually dishonest. And like you were saying, just trying to do like grievance peddling, that this deserves pushback, because it's really unfair to the church, especially after all that the church has done to help the Native Americans who have been treated so badly by other people. But to try to group the church in with that bad treatment, it's just wrong.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think grouping together the church with these other groups is just, it's not accurate. It's disingenuous, as you say. I really like that phrasing that you used. To me, I say that it's irresponsible. It seems ridiculous to me. But historically, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been remarkably progressive in its views, and that comes through the revelation that we have received from God, teaching us, as you said, about the Native Americans and their true origins. As sons and daughters of God, they have equal moral consideration to every other people on the planet.
But this guy at Rise Zion is a piece of work. We were asked to provide a listing of those who have offended us and how they offended us. He's the only name we're presenting.
So I mean, like, I I feel really special, Trey. I'm the only one on the list. And not only that, but he sent my videos to the church law office buildings, just so you know.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't think that's true.
I
just don't think that's true.
Yeah, me neither. I have a very hard time believing that. All right.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, it's all pretty crazy because, like, everywhere I've seen people talking about Chief Midegah, like on Facebook, YouTube, like probably the majority of what I see is negative. And so the fact that he's just singling you out for some reason and saying like you're the only one that's offended them, it's like what is going on? I don't know. And you're like I said, you've been more gracious towards him than most of the people that I've seen.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I thought so. I really did. I thought so. And and I am quite firm in my later videos in response to his threatenings, right, against me and the church. But yeah, right. I don't think that I ever attacked him as a person. I attacked his ideas and specifically the claims that he made. So that's a very important distinction.
It was my own church that attacked like crazy. And so, you know, and yet 2 months later, I still got my temple recommend. I received it.
So he's claiming that he's got his temple recommend. He brings that up a lot in the comment section. He posts on my video comments a lot, saying that he has a temple recommend, guys. He is worthy to have a temple recommend. So you know, and again, I don't think that people, for the most part, in my videos, at least I've seen, are not really attacking him. Now I can't speak for everyone, but as for me, I've only been interested in getting to the bottom of the truth. So I've not attacked you personally, Midegah. Unfortunately, that can't be said of you. You, on the other hand, called me a liar, while simultaneously lying that I've been emailing you and calling you repeatedly. So, I mean, here we are. I mean, like, I don't know what to say, like, more about that.
Yeah, I mean, he says he's got a temple recommend. That's good. I'm happy that he has a temple recommend. I'm happy for anyone that is able to get a temple recommend. There's definitely some concerns here. I mean, like I said, like there's precedent for like this being excommunication level stuff within the history of the church. So what Joseph Smith has, I mean, Joseph Smith and other church leaders have definitely issued out excommunications for very similar stuff to what's going on. So that's why there's huge concerns. I'm not calling for the excommunication of Chief Midegah. In no sense am I calling for that, because that's not my purview, right? But I'm just saying that that's why there's a big concern here.
Yeah. And, you know, I brought this up, you know, I think in a different video, but I would have loved to be, you know, if this is true, if he really has his temple recommend and stuff, I would love to have been a fly on the wall when he was there trying to explain to his stake president exactly how he was going to build a temple on the temple lot. So
right, I mean, like, does the stake president know about that? I mean,
yeah, that's a good question.
That's a big deal. I don't know.
Is he even aware of it? So I mean, I'm just saying, like, there's probably a lot of people who have their temple recommends who probably ought not to have their temple recommends. So just
happens, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And we do have a right to our historical sites, and we do have a right to those that were temples. And if it wasn't for the Torah and it wasn't for the Nephite records, you would have no concept of temples other than what they have over in Greek and Rome. Don't tell us we can't use these words. What are you talking about? You're looking through a window of our culture, of our history.
All right. So that's a big claim. That's a claim. That's a positive claim that he has to prove, right? So if you believe in Revelation, this is what my thoughts were on the subject. If you believe in Revelation, if you believe in the restoration of the gospel, then yes, we would have a concept of temples outside of Greek and Roman temples. I mean, so this statement is just really bizarre to me because, sure, I mean, we do have the Bible right now, and they do mention temples, but even if the Bible had removed all references to temples, if you believe in the restoration of the gospel, then presumably God would restore that necessary knowledge. So this is just a very, very strange thing to say, and it just seems indicative to me that David Taylor isn't really aware of the doctrine of the apostasy or the restoration. Or perhaps he is. Perhaps he's just saying that his people actually never apostatized. So that seems to be something that's floating around out there in the ether. But I mean, again, you're going against the doctrine of the apostasy and the restoration. Like, what is the purpose of even having a restoration then?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, obviously, we didn't receive the temple ordinances today from ancient texts. We received them, like the claim is that Joseph Smith and Brigham Young used revelation through their prophetic mantle to give us today what we have as the temple ceremonies. And so it's just really strange. And then also talking about like temples in Greek and Rome, and like I don't even know what that has to do with it, but
yeah.
but yeah.
this idea like that, you know, we wouldn't even know what temples are if it weren't for the, yeah, it's just, I think it's insane.
We've even asked him, they've been multiple podcasts that have asked him to come on and explain and prove his case.
So no, I'm just going to correct the record right now. This is incorrect. Zion Media has offered to have me on their show. And only after my most recent video exploded in popularity. And that's it. That's the only time that anybody has ever invited me to be on their podcast in regards to Midegah. And also, it was I who initially invited Midegah to come on to my show and explain some of the concerns that I had presented in my first video. So Midegah's only response, as I've said before, was to threaten me with a lawsuit in that video that he later removed. And then I later revoked my invitation due to these threats against me and the church. So that's just to clarify that right there.
Would you still go on Zion Media? Are you considering that?
No, I have ruled that out as a possibility because I am not sure that I actually trust Zion Media any longer. If you think about it, my reasoning behind that is that they have the opportunity, they still have the opportunity to ask Midegah questions, and they haven't. I have no reason to believe that they would be fair in their treatment of me or my side of the issue. And apart from that, I don't have to be present for them to actually do their job and to ask Midegah the hard questions that I would ask him. So that's my reasoning. So
fair enough.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm acting in that function. But Rise Zion, if you're going to go on there and try to get clicks in my name, at least do it on something that's the truth. Not a made-up lie that I'm somehow coming after you. Man, never spoken to you, man. I don't know what your deal is. You're the only person. Rise Zion is the only person that we're sending to Curtin McConkie. That's it, with his links. And we're going to say, hey, what's the difference between this and what occurred against Alex Jones, where he incited violence with his lies against people? You can have free speech all you want. But when your lies and your free speech causes people to threaten other people's lives.
All right, so that's I mean, I don't know what to say about this. Apparently now I'm Alex Jones, you guys. So I mean, this just isn't true. Okay, like, so I've never incited violence against anyone. I've never encouraged anybody to threaten anybody's life. I've never encouraged that ever. I never would do that. Never, ever in a million years. And I never suggested that any other people do that either. And to be fair, I don't think that Alex Jones did that either. I mean, I don't want to be put in a position to defend Alex Jones here, but I mean, like, I don't think that that's what actually happened either. So I mean, I don't know this. What do you think about this?
It's obviously a very strong exaggeration.
Yeah.
If you think, like, you can't try to say that any type of speech about someone else that could be taken as negative is now inciting violence against that person. Like,
yeah,
it's crazy. If that's the case, then he's inciting violence against you right now a lot more than you've incited violence against him, if that's the case. But if you believe that any type of negative speech about somebody else breaks what should be considered under free speech, then you actually just don't believe in free speech.
Yeah, I mean, there's like no such thing as free speech anymore under this standard, right? So
crazy.
In any case, I kind of think that this clip just highlights the litigious nature of David Taylor Midegah. He's not going to come out and threaten me again directly because he realizes the first time it was a really, really bad look. That's why he deleted the video. So he's just going to suggest it like, hey, here's Alex Jones here. We have a case against you. It's like, you have a nice house here. It would be a shame if something were to happen to it, right? Like, I think that's kind of what he's getting here too, is trying to silence me again by indirect threats this time. So he's just trying to intimidate me by invoking Alex Jones' court case, and at the same time insinuating that I'm somehow threatening people's lives or something. And it's just a ridiculous statement. It's just false. So, yeah.
Yeah, blowing things like that out of proportion like this, like, that's more irresponsible for sure than anything that you've said.
That we have an archaeological site. It is the North American version of the cities you find in Central and South America, and it's right here in Missouri. And all the restoration branches are assisting us with that. Like, we have our own Ojibwa record, which again affirms not only the Nephite records, which is a fraction of it, but also the Nemenhah records, and all those that are attacking that.
All right. So, I mean, again, where's the evidence? Like, I mean, like, you're making all these claims, and you're giving us no evidence to look into or even base anything off of. These are huge claims that he's making.
Yeah, and I'm open to it. Like, I definitely think there's a lot of incredible archaeological sites in North America that, like, you can make very compelling cases that they have to do with the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And talking about additional records, like I was saying before, like, this is super exciting, and I'm super open to this type of stuff coming out and coming together. And I want it to. I hope it does. But just when it comes, so like in this case, like, I'm in this type of stuff, I'm happy about what Chief Midegah is doing, and I hope that a lot of it comes to fruition, and that he's, you know, truly doing good things, that good things come out of it. But and like, actually, for the longest time, I was really trying to stay open to Chief Midegah. A lot of people were super skeptical of him. Some people were like fully in on him, and I was trying to keep an open mind. Um and because, like I said, it's exciting, and I really want this stuff to be true. And then I just became instantly like, had to reject him, and like, the red flags came up when he started doing this exact stuff that you've been talking about in your videos. I mean, trying to preach his visions with some pretty
Questionable.
yeah,
Yeah.
some pretty questionable and concerning elements, like a sandy-haired angel. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
And then obviously trying to build temples outside the priesthood of authority. It's like, it's just like a full stop with all these things, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of it's almost kind of sad, because, you know, I want this stuff to be true. I was open to him, but
Mhm.
now that he's doing this type of stuff, it's like, I don't know if I can really trust what he's saying now, because, and I hope that maybe there's part of what he's doing that is like true and legit, and that it can actually bring forth a lot
Yeah.
of good for the church. And that, you know, maybe some of this other stuff he's doing, like, somehow it got roped into there. Maybe he even got deceived with some of his visions. I don't know.
Maybe that's
But
a good idea. Maybe.
yeah, I mean, I want to still keep somewhat of an open mind to him, but definitely
Yeah.
you've got to be very cautious with a lot of the stuff that he's trying to do here.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Like, this is actually really kind of, I've used the word annoying to describe it before. It's annoying to me because I was very interested and excited initially about what Midegah had to say. Okay. So, but he just like keeps stringing people along, like, without evidence, without substantiating his claims. And then he just like starts throwing accusations at, you know, innocent members of the church who are just trying to do their job. You know, like, so yeah, annoying, I think, is a good descriptor of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and then these concerns come up about him trying to go outside of his authority and build temples, and then people, and then just the gaslighting too. Like, that has been absolutely remarkable. Like, people saying he's never claimed to be a prophet, except for then everybody compares him to Samuel the Lamanite. And then, like, and then it's like, he's never claimed to be building temples. He's just building cultural centers, you guys. Except for exactly what he says in his video from Missouri, is that he's building 2 temples. I mean, like, it's just very remarkable to me, the gaslighting and the confusion that seems to surround the person of David Taylor Midegah. And if you think about it, who is the author of confusion? You know, like, this is not from God, in my opinion. And that's like, the author of confusion is not God. Like, that, just plain and simple. God is not going to gaslight you into, you know, into trying to convince you that David Taylor Midegah never claimed to have been building temples. Now, this is something too that I think that we ought to address and bring up. There's this claim that goes around in the comment section that, very much like the LDS Church restored the temples of Japan, or just restored shrines after the earthquake in Japan, that's what David Taylor is actually trying to do. Now, I think that it's important that we address this. Have you seen that at all in the comments?
I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, that's the claim. And that is not what he's doing. Okay. So again, and I think that we've mentioned this before, his audience is primarily Latter-day Saint people. It is not the Ojibwe Anishinaabe people. You would be very hard pressed to find any Anishinaabe peoples who believe the same way that David Taylor Midegah believes, unless they've been introduced to that doctrine at some point in their lives. And you can look this up on Wikipedia and read books about the Anishinaabe peoples and their belief systems. It's very different from Latter-day Saint belief systems. Nevertheless, David Taylor Midegah is directing his remarks to Latter-day Saint people and other people in the Restoration movement when he describes what the purposes of the temples are and the doctrines that surround the temples. He's using very strong Latter-day Saint language as well. And I have video evidence of that all lined up in my previous videos. So just the idea that somehow David Taylor is acting in his role as a chief to restore temples, that is just a false statement. And it hasn't been proven at all that Anishinaabe peoples have any concept of temples whatsoever in the first place. Yeah, which is why I say, where's the evidence? So, yeah, and it's annoying. It really is. It's like, I wanted to believe this stuff. I feel betrayed. You know, like somebody's just trying to, and this is what I truly believe this. I think that he's just trying to gain people. He's just trying to scam people, basically. I think he's a scam artist. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, you talked about like some of the gaslighting, and that's true. Like with Chief Midegah and with like a lot of the stuff that goes down with Zion Media, there's a lot of like stuff that they won't really say super publicly, but then behind the scenes and kind of in their more inner circles, like there's some huge and crazy claims going around.
Oh yeah, about
like,
the Davidic servant and all that.
Yeah, there's a lot actually.
Yeah,
but I don't even really want to get into all that right now. I mean, even like they talk about like the Nemaha records and stuff, and those are interesting. But there's a lot of sketchy stuff that revolves around those as well. So and then like if they're ever asked about some of these things, some of these claims, and are like pressed on it, like they're just like you're talking about with Midegah, there's like a ton of like gaslighting, saying like, no, that never happened, this never happened, we never said that. But then like you've got like, you know, I've seen screenshots of them actually talking about this stuff, and so yeah,
and it's interesting too, because it's just like, well, you know, Zion Media could have done some things to nip this in the bud, to stop this before it got out of hand like it has. But instead they perpetuated it and fed the flames, so to speak. So yeah, I have a hard time trusting Zion Media at this point. Hopefully that changes in the future. I mean, everybody can change, and maybe they start asking some serious questions on their podcasts and start, you know, and there's such institutional distrust nowadays. I mean, surrounding particularly the mainstream media, right? And you guys, I mean, you're Zion Media. You are a media company. That's what you're saying. And if you don't want to become like all the other fake news media branches that are out there, then you've got to start asking the hard questions, and you've got to start vetting people a little bit before you have them on, and just let them spew whatever nonsense, you know, and then not question it. I mean, like, it's one thing if you just want to have like an open forum where people can come in and just present their ideas, but you got to ask questions, you know, especially where it concerns people's eternal salvation. So, I mean, this is serious stuff. Like I haven't like quite internalized the frustration yet that I have against Zion Media and put that into words, but you're seeing a little of that right now. And this is dangerous stuff. You haven't given, what you've done is, and if I had to characterize it, is you've taken advantage of people's starvation for spirituality that exists, and I'm acknowledging that it exists, but you've not given them the proper guardrails to protect themselves. So you've given them spirituality, but you've not given them the proper discernment surrounding that. So
yeah, and kind of like they give out a lot of kind of like novelty type stuff.
yes, it's
without-
all it's the spectacle, it's the circus, right?
Yeah, and with and it a lot of sketchy stuff that revolves around it. And so it's like yeah, this might be really cool and interesting and exciting, but like you're gonna end up doing more harm and disservice than good when all this sketchy stuff is coming out attached to it, just exactly like what's happening with Chief Midegah right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we probably let's just end this then. I'm kind of frustrated with it. But I hope that people can sense the passion that I have for this issue, even though I haven't put to words exactly what I feel yet.
Don't deny your right to be forgiven. And now's your time as we are reaching back for you to stand ready to reach for us. For what other purpose have you been risen to this time? Who are you to fight against us?
Okay. All right. Who are you to fight against us? All right. And these are his last words, his last statement before ending his video. And I thought it was fair to end with his closing statement. So there you have it. I mean, like, it's kind of more word salad in typical Midegah fashion. But what I'm thinking he's suggesting here is that he believes I should repent. By his statement here, don't deny your right to be forgiven, right? He seems to be suggesting that the church in general needs to repent because we're not supporting what Midegah is doing in his efforts, right? Which probably involves huge sums of money to build his so-called cultural centers or temples or whatever else he said, right? Whatever you want to call it. He's using this vague language again, suggesting that we want to fight with him, when in reality, all some of us has been doing is asking hard questions, as Zion Media should have been doing from the very beginning. Now, why have we been risen? That's a question that he poses. Well, if you're aware of the restoration, the gospel of Jesus Christ was restored in these latter days to bring people to God, to Christ, through the proper priesthood channels, right? Not Midegah. So, I mean, that's why we've been risen. That's the whole reason why the church exists. You asked the question, I answered it. There you go. So throughout this whole video, he just seems rather confused, in my opinions, about the doctrines surrounding the great apostasy and the restoration. This seems to be his stumbling block. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess just for my final words, like Midegah, Chief Midegah, if you're watching this, I like a lot of what you're doing, especially what you were doing. I was super open to you. I still want to be open to you in a way. I don't, I wish no harm against you. I don't want you to be excommunicated. But you have to realize that you're doing things that are not compatible with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And not only that, you're attacking the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You come out in opposition against them. And I would love for what you're doing to be legitimate and true. It's exciting. In fact, if the brethren, the quorum of the 12, if they came out and said, they received revelation and they're in support of what you're doing and the church is backing, I mean, that'd be awesome. That'd be pretty cool.
That would be great.
I do doubt that would happen just because of how you've been going about things. It just doesn't make sense that would actually line up with how things are supposed to go, what the church is supposed to be doing. And so just like I was saying, like, I think you just need to pick a lane. Are you, your own thing, your own Indian chief doing your own thing, or are you a member of the church trying to do things for the church? And then, you've got to decide, like, is the church a great thing that it is helping to bring your culture and the ancient traditions and religion of your culture to light? And, it was amazing that the church restored this, or is the church a big, bad, oppressive corporation that you have to fight against? And so you can't be using it both ways. And so I just invite you to analyze what you're doing, analyze some of your experiences, your visions, and just try to work out exactly what you're going at here, because it's getting really confusing
Mm.
for a lot of people. And that's why a lot of people are just flat out rejecting you, and you're not going to end up getting a lot of support the way that you're going about it right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You know, for my closing remarks, I will just say to Chief Midegah that we are disappointed that you continue to attack the church. You continue to attack me personally as a human being, not as, I mean, it's one thing if you said that I was lying and then provided evidence for that, but you haven't done that. You just attacked me and called me a liar. But just know this, that I will continue to pursue the truth as I see fit to do so, and I will not be intimidated by your videos. I will not be intimidated by your remarks. So I'm no pushover, and the truth needs to be said because somebody has to do it. And, you know, Zion Media doesn't seem willing to take on that role, so I will. I'll ask you questions, and the more that you don't answer my questions, the more bad it looks for you. You should instead respond to my ideas clearly and concisely, using language that is commensurate with an ambassador. I would expect somebody who is an ambassador for their people to be more able to express themselves with very clear and concise language. And that has been a huge problem, I believe, from the beginning. So in any case, thank you for watching, everybody. If you haven't already, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, and until next time, bye.